gears.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Gregg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm restoring history one piece at a time. Tonight we're going to be doing part 2 of the United Phonographs Corporation 1918 phonograph that I picked up a few weeks ago. In part 1 I got the motor disassembled, and in part 2 we're going to start putting it back together again. I think I'm going to get it all back together again, and we'll wind it up. I've got new gears. We'll wind it up and see how it works out. And then in part 3, I'll probably work on the reproducer and get this thing all put back together again, and we'll just see if we can make her sing. So without further ado, here is part 2 of the United Phonographs Corporation 1918 phonograph motor reassembly. Alright, so we're going to be starting assembly on this 1918 United Phonographs Corporation phonograph motor. As you can see, I've got it here on my Black & Decker workmate. I got the chassis of it, I guess you would call it, the frame, all cleaned up really nice, and then I shot it with a coat of nickel paint, so it's really close to the original color. And it turned out really nice. The other thing that's sitting here is the gears. The new gears. Remember the old gears. Let's go see the... Okay, so here's the old gears. Old gear. New gear. Old gear, new gear. This is the one that had all of the horrible missing teeth, boogered, gone teeth. This is the one that had the chipped and screwed up teeth and the bent teeth. As you can see, they're bent. These are not bent. These are not screwed up. These are perfect. As is this one. Beautiful. So, we're in good shape for the gears. That was my biggest concern. I got lucky. I did research online. I called a couple places, and they basically told me that this phonograph was very rare. There were like 200 fledgling companies back in the early 1900s making phonographs, and none of them stayed in business very long, etc., etc. Well, I found a gentleman, George Vollema, I think is his last name. I'll tell you, I'll get the name right. His name is George. He's up in Michigan, and I'll get you the name of his company. But George has a facility where he collects these old phonographs and sells parts, new and used. He has a 6,000 square foot warehouse where he keeps the old motors and such. And when I contacted him, he said, send me a picture of what you got and I'll look and see what I got. And lo and behold, he came back within 4 hours and said, you won't believe it. He goes, I actually have one. And he sent me pictures of it. And I said, well, are you gonna be willing to sell me the gears or the whole motor? And he came back and he said, I don't usually sell the whole motors, but I'll sell you the gears. So obviously I took him up on it, because the likelihood of me finding a good set of gears is probably next to none. So I was pretty accurate in my cost when I was looking up gears. That was me looking up new off-the-shelf gears in general from small gear manufacturers, and I could never find a set that had the correct pitch and number of teeth and pitch angle and all that. But when I was looking at the off-the-shelf, it looked like it was going to be about $100. These were exactly $100 for these two. So I have $100 in the price of the phonograph at this point, $100 in the gears. I'm not quite done yet. I fixed the spring. and assuming it holds up and doesn't break, that'll save me about 50 bucks. But I found another part that I'm going to need, and I called George back, and sure enough he has them. I just have to get them here. But when I was cleaning my parts up, I don't know how well you guys can see this. This is the bearing on one end for the drive gear shaft that drives the spindle here. And I don't know how well it's coming through, but you can see it's not round, it's oblong. So that's not going to work. The other one's fairly round, but since he had the two and they're rare as hen's teeth, I ordered them from him. He gave me a great deal on them. It basically, including shipping, it was $20 for the two bearings. So got me some new set screws. Remember I broke the one off, although he did ship me the one with it in there already. So I can use that if I choose to do so. I'm not sure that I will or not. I guess if I want to keep it original, I should. Anyway, got the parts all cleaned up. There's the one spring that I fixed. You see I got the bin closer to the center of the hole now. I should be able to grab it with the arbor. I appreciate those who sent me a message telling me I wound it backwards. They were absolutely correct, and I caught that myself when I was editing my video. I was like, I put that in backwards. Dang it, now I gotta take it back out. Well, I needed to take it back out anyway to get that tighter, like I told you. I was gonna do it with pliers in there. Once I realized I had wound it backwards, I just took it back out. That gave me a chance to put a little more lubrication. I basically kept my fingers lubricated with grease as I wound it up, and it kept adding grease to it, so it's well lubricated. So that's that one. Here's the other side. This one's done as well. You'll notice this one has a little more spacing in there. That's because the coils are tighter around that arbor, whereas mine broke. And that's why I'm hoping with the tempering I did on it, the annealing, that when I wind it the first time, it'll pull it around the way it's supposed to without breaking and failing. Not saying it will. If it does, I can get a replacement spring. It's not a big deal. The rest of the gears are in good shape. Everything cleaned up nice. There's the governor. He cleaned up nice. Everything's good about it. So we're in pretty good shape. When I get the two new bearings in, we'll get this together. I should have them in a couple days, and they'll be on the next piece of this video. So we're going to go ahead and get started putting this old United Corporation's phonograph motor back together again tonight. I don't have the bearings for the counter gear, but that doesn't stop me from starting the reassembly. I said just a little bit ago, I showed you the new gears, and the name of the company is Great Lakes Antique Phonographs, and the owner is George Vollema, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'll put it up here on so that you can see it. But George, great guy, and I was just so happy for this thing to be so rare that in his 6,000 square foot warehouse he actually had one that I can get parts off of that was actually in good shape. But for tonight, let's go ahead and get started on this. So let's look at our shafts. I got a couple shafts in here. I have the arbor, the springs, which is what this is, and I've got to get that in there. That's the one that was in here, if you guys remember, that I had so much problem with. And of course now everything's nice because I cleaned everything up and everything sliding together nice and everything's working good. Washer that's got to go on here, and I got the gear that has to go on behind that. Alright. So the gear went on here, but I'm not going to stick it completely on. I want it kind of loose to start. Alright, so we're going to put some grease on this washer, thrust washer. It's a fiber washer. And we'll put it in here. Something like that. So we're going to put these screws right here. That's what we're putting in. That's the plan. That's what I'm going to try to do. Alright, there's one in there. One started. I'm just going to start them for now. Once I get them started, I'll have a little more flexibility to move things around. I hope. There, I think we're all started on that. Alright, now I can turn this. Alright, so now we gotta see if we can get this pin to latch on my spot there. There it is, I got it. It's in there, it's latched now. Now we just gotta hope it don't come unlatched, but it's latched. That's what I was trying to get. Alright. So now that we got that latched, I'm going to put my washer back on here. So, since I got that latched, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down a little bit better screwdriver. Alright, those are in there. Well, I'm still in camera with you. Okay, we're still latched. Let's see if we can set this in here. Like that. I probably can't send that all the way in there like that till I get the other spring on there. So, this is the other spring. Obviously, a little trial and error here as far as assembly process. Go ahead and put this other spring on here. Whoop, can't do it yet. Almost forgot something. Got a metal plate that goes on there. This metal plate goes in here first. Like that. And then the spring goes in there. Like that. Then we try and put all this back together again, I hope. My washer started. That slid over and down like that. Alright, let's get another one started. We got one right here. Knew they went to Phillips heads for a reason, huh? Last screw in right here. There's one. There's two. There's three. And there's four. Now, This is where it starts to become hairy. There it is. Snug. It's snug. I'm not like gonna wrench the hell out of it here, but it's snug. Let's see. Let's put this in here. Do it like this. Okay. Alright, so that should be pretty locked to that. Now, let's see what we got next. I believe is this part right here. If I can still fit that on there. I gotta go back and look at my photos because I gotta make sure if there's a wear washer on that side that I don't have in there yet. And I gotta determine how the best way for me to get that pin started in there. If you guys remember, I had a hell of a time getting that apart. Okay. I got that pin situation figured out. The pin technically goes in from the top. So I just knocked it back in. I pressed it back in some, and I should be able to get that on there. But I need to get the spindle in place too. So I'll put a little grease on the spindle. And we'll get the spindle in the hole. Like that. A little bit of tension on that felt. Alright, now let's put a little bit of grease on this shaft. And we'll get that on there. Up where it belongs. A little bit of grease on the tip of that. I got grease in the end of the piece I'm putting on there, but I'm just throwing a little bit of grease on this too. There we go, come on, get on there. There you go. Alright. Alright. Now this gear should be able to go on. Like that. A little grease on it. I know it seems weird that there was no washers on it. You know, there was a washer on that in there, but there was really no other washers on this, which I found kind of strange. But heck, I don't know what they were thinking back then. The interesting thing on this one that was in it is it has a really fine point on it, which I find interesting because it doesn't really have a sharp hole that it goes into, and I would think that that would kind of slip with that design. Now I'm going to stick it in there, but I think I'm going to go to the store and get another Allen screw with a proper thread, because I'm not a fan of this one. I mean, that point starts pretty much getting in there immediately. I don't know. I don't like that. And that's the only place I got it. Actually, I think it goes right in that hole. That hole makes more sense. There we go. I'm not a fan. I'm still not a fan of this screw. I guess it's in there. I might still do something different with that. I'm just not a. I would rather get a Allen head set screw and taper the end of it than use this screw here. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do. Alright, I think that I'm going to stop this piece right here and pick back up tomorrow. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys something. I'm getting ready to get the governor in here. This is the governor. But I wanted to show you these bearings, how tiny they are. Okay, so these are not the bearings I just purchased. These are what came with it. Let's see if you guys can see how small those holes are in relation to this. Let me show you the bearings that go in here, and I gotta be careful I don't drop these. See if I can get it in focus to you. If you can see that, if we're focusing, that's one of the bearings. That's how small those are. That goes in here. And that's what rides on that governor. But I'm ready to put some grease in the end of these. We're going to put a little grease on the end of these. And then I'm going to stick the bearing in there. Alright, it's in there now. If you can see in the end, the shine is in the end of it, it's inside there now. Alright, those two are ready to go on. I got to get the arm on the brake put on here. This is the brake that reduces the speed based on the RPM of the record. Brake arm pushes against this rotor right here to slow it down. Okay, washer's on there, we're getting ready to install it. Like that. Alright, I'm going to install this bearing on this end, not only on the end of it, but in the gear section of the worm. Get you on the screen where you can see what I'm doing here. And some on this end. I put a little bit of grease on that spindle as well. I'm not going to be worried too much about how much grease I got on here as far as having too much, because I can always go back and clean it off a little bit, but I think the more the grease the better to start with anyway. I have a heck of a time getting I think I'm going to try and center that. Make it so that our looks pretty good actually right there. See where that other end is, because we got to make sure that we catch the, we'll kind of even these out some versus catching that gear, because I don't want to get too close to the end on the bearing, because it'll have to be finally adjusted. You don't want to crank these down so that you crush that bearing either. You want them to slip. Alright, there's that. Now, I got to get my counter gear in there. So let me smear a little grease on this gear. There we go. Alright. Put our shaft in there. And our shaft in here. So this screw on this end right here is what basically controls our in play here on the gear mesh. This one I'm probably going to put a little, once I get it where it needs to be, I'll probably put a little Loctite on it. So that's kind of the assembly there. I'll back you off some so you can see a bigger overall picture. Okay, so we get some grease on this shaft. Slide it in here. Get our new gear out. Our fiber washer here. Like that. Get our other fiber washer on this end, like that. Get my new $100 gear out. There we go. I got the pin he sent with it. Wow, look how nice the alignment is on those gears when that's pulled up against the thing. Let's see if that goes in now. All right. Now, ratchet mechanism on there. This is the pawl mechanism that when you wind it prevents the spring from unwinding. I think. Okay. Maybe. Alright, so the pawl mechanism's on there, but now I got to get a cotter pin. It's got a little spring washer that goes on there before the cotter pin does. And the cotter pin sits in that slot right there when it's in there correctly. Or at least that's the way it's supposed to be, I think. Either sits in the middle or it sits to the side. Alright, so I got the crank. I went upstairs and took it off. Let's see if we can get this thing screwed on here. I remember when I took it off, it was a real pain in the butt to take off. I'm not sure which way it screws on here. Is it a reverse thread or what? Like that. There we go. Okay. I think. Now, I'm not sure which way this thing cranks. I'm assuming the direction I'm turning is the direction it cranks, but I don't want to start cranking anything until it's ready to start cranking. And we're doing something here. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know if we're doing it right, but we're running. Now the one thing I did notice is the spindle, when this thing is the opposite direction, right now it's upside down. The spindle actually will be sitting on the ball bearing that's in this piece. Right now it's kind of hanging down. I'm not sure if that's gonna, how much that's gonna hurt us, is what I'm trying to say, in the way this thing's gonna run. But I really can't flip it around because I don't have a block to mount it to. So I was thinking that I might just kind of push up on the spindle with like a socket or something, so it's just a slight amount of contact on it to get it properly. I'll wipe most of this grease back off. Sure what the knocking is, but it appears to be working. Alright, well, it looks like it's working. I want to crank that. Crank it on up and see if my spring is going to center itself. I'm not going to keep the video riding for this, but I also am going to let you guys know what this knocking is, because I obviously got to figure that out. And I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that it's upside down right at the moment too. That might have something to do with it. It looks like it works. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and crank it up some more. See if we pop the spring or whatever. Definitely running. Well, you guys probably can't see that. You might see this gear turning and this gear turning slowly. Let me take you off and I'll show you. There we go. Okay guys, I built myself a box to mount it on so I could get it in the same angle in which it actually operates while in the unit, and it's much quieter. There is a little bit of racket going on, and I've figured out what it is. It's this brass counter gear here, because as I was showing you, those bushings were worn. The bearings, the two brass bearings, the one here and the one over here, because those were worn, off to the side, it screwed the teeth up on this brass gear right here. Now it's in alignment. I actually have a black mark. It's getting ready to come around right there. There's a black mark coming around. I don't know if you've seen that or not. But the teeth are the worst about an inch before that black mark. And you can hear it when it cycles around there every time. But it's working good. The spring seems to be working good. I'm probably going to have to contact George and see how much he'll sell me the brass gear out of that one that those bearings came out of, and that would quiet it on down. It's fairly quiet now. You hear a little bit of noise going on in there, but it's that brass gear. So anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and call this good for the motor, and then take it up on the diaphragm and putting it back together again here in a week or two, maybe a couple weeks. So that'll wrap it up.